I love plants, and I bet you do too, because they add so much to your home, to your office, wherever you are. Plants are wonderful. They just change the atmosphere. But when you say orchids, you think, ooh, I don't know if I can keep them alive. I bet there are things that you wish you knew. Well, joining me today is Julio Morales, and he says orchids can be grown successfully, huh? By the average person?
That's correct. Orchids are pretty easy, and we tend to grow our orchids in pots and containers, but you got to think orchids are grown in nature on the wild, clinging onto branches, cliffs, rocks, whatever you can. Now, what we try to do is grow them in a material that stays moist enough to mock or redo that material so that they're used to living like that in your home as they are in nature.
Oh, okay.
So orchids are easy. There's actually companies out there that promote marketing for orchids, you know, where you put 2 to 3, maybe 4 ice cubes on your orchid a week, and that's all the essential water that they need. And then when you set them on eastern or western windows, it gives them enough light.
Okay, let's back up then. Just be honest. Why do most people think it's so hard to grow orchids? Why do we have that perception? And we say it's so beautiful, but I'm afraid I'll kill it. What do we do to these things that's not good?
One of the biggest things is back in the day, a lot of people were real jealous when it came to orchids. The kings of this world wanted to have the sole orchids, the best orchids in the world. And whenever they'd go to harvest these orchids from the rainforest, they would actually send chartered ships to come bring them back to their kingdoms and then burn the rest in the forest, and no one else can have the same.
Wow.
So the concept was there wasn't a lot of information out there today on how to take care of them, so people were scared. You know, when you go out there and buy an orchid that starts off at $20 versus a pansy that's $2, you don't want to waste your money. You know, so if you have the right information on how to take care of them, you can obviously, you know, have great looking orchids.
Now, I heard a couple of things that you said. Can you show me one, and I'll ask you a couple of questions. If I were to purchase this, what is the name of the one that's, say this one. Okay.
This was an Iguanodonera. It's an intergeneric Cattleya. It actually has a great fragrance, so if you want it to smell it,
I would love to smell it.
It's not only beautiful, but very fragrant.
Now, it is. I mean, and it's not slight. It's a large, very good smell. Now, if I were to purchase this and take it home, what would you recommend? What window would I put it in, or how would I keep it alive?
I would put it in an eastern or western window. If you have nothing but southern light in your house, then you can put it in a southern window within a few feet of it. You water it once a week. You could actually stick like a stick in there, and as long as there's moisture coming out on the stick, it has enough humidity. So southern, eastern, or western windows with very little water.
What about air conditioning? Because we're, you know, in the South, and we're going to fire up that air conditioner. That's what I thought was the bad thing. Is that, how do you adjust to it?
You typically don't want to put it underneath the actual air conditioning
vent.
The vent. Orchids can tolerate temperatures as low as 55 degrees, and there's some that are actually found in Antarctica, so obviously below freezing. And then nothing hotter.
This is an education.
That's right. Nothing hotter than about 85, 90 degrees in most cases. So in an average, orchids are really more of an indoor plant because you can actually take care of them, give them the moisture and the love that they require, versus being outside in the direct sunlight, which they do not like.
We do have a call. Debbie from Phoenix City. Debbie, what's your question for Julio?
Hi, Dee.
Hi, how are you doing?
Oh, doing great. Thank you. I was wondering, after the orchid has bloomed, do you prune them back?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
Absolutely. Orchids like to give you a set of flowers, and they'll last anywhere from 4 to 6 months on most of these phalaenopsis here, the larger blooms.
Okay.
And then after the flowers have fallen off, the stem tends to stay green or will turn brown. If you go to the base of the plant and snip it, it'll actually give it the rest that the orchid needs. It needs at least an average of 6 to 9 months before it reblooms again. A lot of people tend to leave the stalk if it stays green, and it will rebloom from that stalk, giving you 2 to 3 blooms at a time. The best thing in my recommendation would be to go ahead and cut the stem back. That way it'll give you a full flush of flowers, anywhere from 8 to 9, maybe even 12. The more mature the plant gets, the longer the stem, the more blooms you get.
Good information. Now, what do we feed orchids? They're different? They're the same species, but different plants, so do they require different foods? Typically,
orchids like the same type of nutrients. What we strictly recommend would be an equal balanced fertilizer, 20-20-20. You can go to your Lowe's or your Home Depot and get your your fertilizer, it'll say Orchid Plus or Orchid Bloom Booster on there as well. And if you do a half strength version versus the full strength like the bag, you can do it on every watering.
So if you half the amount of the fertilizer, you can do it on every watering. I heard you say something just a couple of minutes ago that when you put it in that appropriate window, you said don't put it right up on the window. Why? What makes the difference?
Southern windows tend to get very hot. So when the sun's blaring through and it shines on the leaves, you could get burn spots. So what you would do is set it away so you don't have that direct heat. If you want it up close, you'd really have to have a circulating fan. In an average house, you really don't want to have a fan in the middle of the room pointing on your plants themselves. So I just strongly recommend pulling it away from the window a little bit, and it gives it just enough light that it needs and not the overheating that you would get through the glass.
I have someone who has a question. She doesn't want to be on the air. Sometimes our viewers don't want to hear their own voices. But she says, when is the best time to plant?
To plant an orchid? Orchids grow all year round. There's different seasons for different ones for them to bloom, but you can plant any orchid anytime. And again, as long as you're maintaining the temperatures above 55 at night, but lower than 85 during the day, you can plant any orchid you want to and have it bloom for you that year.
Now, is the average price, you mentioned $20. Is the average price about $20?
When you go to the local box stores, you will find that orchids are anywhere from $20 to $25. A lot of times you'll find the nicer orchids in actual orchid specialist stores or florists, and they might range anywhere from $40 to $45. The nice thing about the florists is they're actually either getting them from a local grown orchid grower, so they're acclimated to our temperatures here. A lot of your box stores tend to transport them in from places like Hawaii and Florida and California, so they get the initial shock of the transport. And a lot of people haven't had a lot of luck with that, because sometimes unless you know what you're doing.
How do you know? I was going to say, how do you know where they're coming from? So you need to ask where the orchid came from?
I would strongly recommend finding the manager of the indoor greenhouse for those box stores and ask them to see where they have gotten or where they received their orchids from. If they are coming from California, Hawaii, and Florida, not to say that that's a bad thing, but again, you got to keep in mind, if this is your first time buying an orchid, you're not exactly sure on how to take care of it. You may not have success at the very beginning, but as long as you get the right appropriate information and knowledge of how to take care of them, you will do fine with it.
And you have a store, Garden of Eden?
I do have a store at the landings between Weight Watchers and Elite Tan on the upper level of the landings on Airport Thruway. So anyone can stop by there and actually check out the orchids that we grow here locally. We've got 6,000 square feet of greenhouse space in Seal, Alabama.
Woo!
So
we'll have to go down there.
That's right. And there's thousands.
I may go crazy. I love flowers.
There's thousands and thousands of orchids there. So a lot of people can go to the greenhouse, they can go to our store and see our beautiful orchids, and they're nice because they're acclimated to our environment versus having the initial shock or the treatment and transport for your orchids.
Okay. We have to have you back. There's so many questions that I wasn't able to get to. Are you going to come back?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to keep you to the promise.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much, Julio.
Thank you, Dee.
Still to come on the Dee Armstrong Show, we have to recap the Oscars last night with Taryn Adler of Star Magazine. It wouldn't be right if we didn't. Music from Tim Davis. We'll talk with Colleen Bordeaux from the Jules Collins Smith Museum of Auburn, and more on the Dee Armstrong Show, so don't go away.